Hi everybody, I'm Hera. As Sandra said, I remembered her as the UX kids lady because that was my shorthand for her. We actually met in November and this is February, so it's pretty fast turnaround to be here. I'll tell you a bit about EMPOWERHACK and about myself. So I founded Chayn about 3 years ago. I was 23. I was really disillusioned by charities and how they were working with women who were experiencing domestic abuse. So the websites I kept coming across were super non-UX friendly. Like, they were really bad. You would come into a website and you would see everything you're not supposed to see. As someone who's experiencing abuse, you'd want to see how the website could help you. But all you saw was how awesome the organization is. So I was really disillusioned, and not being a UX expert at all, but hey, thank God for Mashable. I just read up loads of articles about what makes a good website. And then I started Chayn. So we now have loads of projects, one of which is EMPOWERHACK. The whole idea behind Chayn is to create open source technology to empower women to help themselves if they're facing oppression or violence around the world. So EMPOWERHACK actually came about last year. As you all have probably seen in the news, the refugee crisis has kind of taken over, from swarms of migrants taking over our jobs, raping our women, to setting fire to things. It has been, the response that the public has given, especially in Europe, has been very mixed to refugees. And that's about, I think, early last year, the tech community started mobilizing to say, well, there's something that we must do. Where governments are failing, we must step up. So Chayn had been doing hackathons on the humanitarian crisis for 2 years, but tech refugees really became prominent about late last year. And there were 3 people who went to a tech refugees event, and they were really excited because they wanted to do an event about, they wanted to create a solution for women and children. They were feminists, and they realized that there was a problem there. And then when they went to the event, the most people who came to the event were men. So, no doubt they didn't really think that women had any particular extra needs. So out of 10 teams that came out of the first Tech Refugees hackathon, only 1 looked at women and girls, and that was the team that my friends were in. So they got in touch, and one of them was a volunteer for Chayn, and they said, we must do something about this. So that's how EMPOWERHACK came about. I don't know how much you've seen around the problems women face. If you look at the next slide, there's a bit of statistic here, but I'd love to just see a raise of hands, if possible. About how much coverage have you seen about the specific issues that women face as refugees? Not much, so I can take you through a little bit of that. So women and girls face particular challenges at every stage of the migration. So around 80% of all refugees around the world, not just the current crisis, are women and children. First from Syria and Iraq, that's 50%. Now, when women and children especially women and girls, are leaving a war zone, they're very vulnerable because smugglers and traffickers are not bound by any law, and they often will abuse women and sell them on to rich individuals in the Middle East and West. And once you get on the boats, especially if women are unaccompanied, when they get off at Turkey or Greece, they're at increased risk. I don't know if you've seen the footage from Lesbos, but what happens at Lesbos is you get off the boat, and there's a swarm of volunteers who just come, grab you off the sea, and then put you into cars. And all they're wearing are high visibility jackets. So that's the only way of identifying a volunteer. There is no registration system. So it could be a volunteer, and it could be a human smuggler. There is absolutely no way of knowing, which is why you probably saw the article that telegraphed it about how many children are missing. There are thousands of children that are missing. Nobody knows where they are. That's because it's really easy to get lost. Women, especially from Middle Eastern cultures, are very shy and have been brought up to not talk about abuse, to not talk about sexual assault, and are very scared of the law because, all refugees are very scared of the law. So when they're exploited in Europe, they're particularly at risk because they don't want to report staff members of aid crews, and they don't want to report against host communities because they're afraid they'll get kicked out. That makes them particularly vulnerable. They're also afraid to ask for little things like sanitary pads. I was brought up to not even speak that word in front of men. If my mother saw I was talking about this, she would die. So that is the level of it. So actually asking for sanitary pads, having that language is completely foreign. So there are reports that in Calais, women are choosing, it's so unsafe to go to the toilets there because for thousands of them, they're just like 12. They are, where they're supposed to shower, that's where they're doing everything because they're so scared. So, and then when it comes to having access to technology, actually women have less access to technology. Often they'll have a shared phone, but it's their only lifeline of being in touch with their family members. So if they get separated on the way with their brother, their father, their husband, it makes them particularly vulnerable. And there's like, this is just when they get into the camps. And then from camps, when they settle into European societies, there's more and more problems with integration there. As you know, the rise of Islamophobic attacks have been particularly hard for women. There's lack of education in camps, in refugee camps, especially the ones in Europe. So it's very, very difficult for women to continue their education. If they can't continue their education, then how do they find a job? And when they find a job, they're often propositions for sex. So there's increased hurdles at every way, and being raised in a very protective environment, they're also less likely to report abuse. So one of the things that came out of the hack is these problems, and EMPOWERHACK was about creating solutions to these challenges. We have 3 theme areas. We have health, we have education and employment, and we have gender-based violence. So we held our first EMPOWERHACK in November last year in London, and we'll be having 3 more in April, one in London, Oxford, and Amsterdam. Put together by volunteers, just by the goodness of people, and you'll see I'll explain to you 2 of the apps that we're actually now incubating and taking them forward with the help of refugees, and we partner with people who work with refugees themselves so that what we're creating is not useless, and it's not something that we're creating for refugees, but that it is actively usable by them. So if you go to the next slide, I'll talk to you about the 2 solutions that we are currently developing. One is called Her Story, which is about when you live in a society where it's very difficult to talk about like taboo subjects like abuse, and abuse at every level, from your family, from strangers, from colleagues, from staff members of organizations. I mean, there are reports in Jordan that women are being encouraged by quite well-known charities to be sold off for marriage to wealthy individuals. So the kind of discrimination that we have systemic is actually quite deep down. So these are very difficult things to talk about. So Her Story is about creating a space that allows women to talk to each other through storytelling, but also through like anonymous sharing of what they go through, whether that's as simple as, today I couldn't figure out what to say to the shopman in like Berlin, where the pad was. I couldn't figure out where it was. How do I ask for a sanitary pad rather than a tampon? You know, like a simple question like that, to something more complex like, my husband beats me and we've just left like a war-torn area. I don't want to leave him, but I also don't know what my rights are in this new country. So that's what Her Story is about. Today, however, we'll be focusing on Ha Baby, and Audrey is here, who's the project manager of Ha Baby, which is all about prenatal and postnatal care for women. So that's one of the, so just to give you a bit of background, when the refugee crisis started, the Syrian refugee crisis, so when the refugees from Syria and Iraq started flooding into nearby countries like Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and then into Greece, and from there onwards other parts of Europe, for about a year and a half, the UN categorically denied that there were absolutely no problems whatsoever that women were facing that were different to those that men were facing. So it took them a year and a half to actually admit, after many reports came out that journalists actually brought out and charities did, and they then conceded and said, actually, yes, there are huge problems on migration, from sexual assault to kidnapping to forced prostitution, and absolute lack of healthcare when it comes to maternal health. So women were getting pregnant on the way before when they were leaving, and to think that pregnancy is one of the most traumatic experiences your body can go through as a woman, and then doing that journey and then going into a new country where you're not mostly wanted and have less access to resources, you don't know the language, is very, very difficult. So Habibi is about solving that, and you'll hear from Audrey more about what Habibi is and what you guys will be hearing about today and how you can help. So if you go to the next slide, my last thing is, once it comes here, yes. So our next hackathons are happening in London, Oxford, and Amsterdam. If you are interested, please do join. We are desperately glad to have you because we would love to have more UX people. But I mean, Sandra's done a great job since she's been involved in helping us make the solutions more user-friendly, and we'd really love to continue that journey because there is no way that we can meet the need. The need is far greater than all of our resources combined, so we need all the help that you guys can give. So I'd love to talk to you more about that, and Sandra can tell you more about EmpowerHack. Audrey's going to be here till the end of the evening, and we'd love to hear from you.